the retreat that redefined wealth. They arrived expecting exclusivity, private villas, discreet luxury, proof that the price was justified. What they encountered instead was something far less tangible and far more unsettling. This retreat did not display wealth. It concealed it. In an industry built on signaling status, this place made a quiet, radical decision. Nothing here would indicate how much it cost. No visible hierarchy. No upgraded tiers. No spaces reserved for those who paid more. From the moment guests arrived, money seemed to lose its voice. To understand why this retreat mattered, we have to look at how wealth traditionally expresses itself. Separation, access, distance from inconvenience. Luxury retreats perfected this language, offering privacy not as peace, but as proof. The more invisible others became, the more valuable the experience felt. This place rejected that logic. The land was shared equally. Views were not tiered. Rooms differed slightly, but none were superior. The most beautiful spaces were communal, designed to be experienced together without ownership. Even arrival followed the same path for everyone, with no shortcuts or private entries. At first, this created friction. Guests accustomed to privilege searched for differentiation. They asked which rooms were best, which experiences were exclusive, which areas were off-limits. The answer unsettled them every time. None. The retreat had been designed around a different definition of wealth. Not accumulation, but sufficiency. Not access, but presence. Comfort was consistent, not escalating. Privacy existed, but not as separation, as quiet. This philosophy extended into every detail. No visible upgrades. No premium experiences unlocked at higher prices. Even service followed a principle of equality. Staff did not prioritize. They responded. The early response was mixed. Some guests felt disoriented, even diminished, without markers of status. They felt unsure of their place. Others felt something unexpected. Relief, without comparison. There was nothing to defend, nothing to outperform, nothing to prove. Wealth, stripped of its performance, began to feel lighter. But removing hierarchy introduced a deeper risk. If money could no longer distinguish experience, what justified the cost at all? Why would people pay so much for something that refused to acknowledge their advantage? As the first season unfolded, the answer began to surface. Quietly and without spectacle, guests stayed longer than planned. Conversations deepened, time slowed, and the retreat revealed the first hint of what it was truly offering, a different measure of value, one that had nothing to do with more. As days passed, the absence of hierarchy began to change behavior. Guests stopped scanning rooms for superiority. They lingered longer in shared spaces. Conversations formed without the usual calculations of status and advantage. Without visible tiers, people met each other without preamble. This unsettled some guests deeply. Accustomed to using wealth as orientation, they felt briefly unanchored. Without signals telling them where they stood, uncertainty surfaced. Who was important here? Who belonged? The retreat offered no answers, and that silence was intentional. The conflict sharpened when staff noticed a subtle shift. Requests grew simpler, not because guests wanted less, but because they no longer felt the need to optimize every moment. Meals stretched naturally. Activities happened spontaneously. Time stopped feeling scarce. The retreat's design reinforced this transformation. Paths crossed intentionally. Spaces overlapped. No area was hidden behind permission or price. Privacy existed, but it was chosen, not purchased. Guests could withdraw, but not elevate themselves above others. Critics questioned the model. Without exclusivity, was it still luxury? Without separation, was it still premium? The retreat refused to answer publicly. It allowed the experience to speak privately. The reveal came through contrast. Guests would leave temporarily. Into cities, airports, conversations filled with signals and transactions, and feel the weight return immediately. Then they would come back and notice how their shoulders dropped without explanation. The retreat had not removed wealth. It had removed its noise. But this created a deeper tension. If the experience felt richer without hierarchy, what would happen once guests returned to a world still structured by it? Would the retreat feel like an escape or an indictment? As departures approached, staff observed something unexpected. Guests delayed leaving, not out of indulgence, but reluctance. The retreat had made time feel sufficient, not compressed. Value was no longer measured by how much was consumed. It was measured by how little was needed. Yet one final question remained unresolved. If wealth could be redefined as enough, rather than more, how fragile was that realization once guests re-enter a world built on comparison? That fragility revealed itself in the moments just before departure. As guests packed, old habits resurfaced quietly. Phones came back out. Schedules tightened. Conversations shifted toward what waited beyond the retreat's boundaries. The world of comparison was already reclaiming attention. And yet, something had changed. Guests did not rush to maximize final experiences. There was no frantic attempt to extract value before leaving. Instead, people lingered in stillness, as if trying to memorize a different rhythm. The retreat had taught them something subtle. That enough was not a compromise, but a relief. The emotional conflict reached its peak in a realization many guests shared privately. The retreat had not made them feel richer. It had made them feel less poor in time, attention, and presence. Wealth, redefined this way, felt unsettling because it could not be displayed or defended. This forced a reckoning. If value came from sufficiency, then much of what passed for luxury outside the retreat began to feel performative. Guests described returning home and feeling overstimulated by choice, overwhelmed by optimization. The retreat had quietly dismantled a belief they had never questioned. More is better. The retreat offered no guidance on how to carry this insight forward. It did not provide manifestos or philosophies. It trusted guests to discover the tension on their own. Some ignored it, others could not. Repeat visits told the deeper story. Guests did not return to feel exclusive. They returned to feel recalibrated. The retreat became less about escape and more about remembering what enough felt like. Conversations among returning guests were different, less comparative, more reflective. The place had achieved something rare. It had decoupled value from status. By refusing to let money speak loudly, the retreat had revealed how little needed to be said for an experience to feel rich. Yet this clarity brought the final challenge into focus. If wealth could be felt without being displayed, could the retreat protect that feeling? Or would it eventually be overwhelmed by a world determined to monetize it? Protection required discipline. As the retreat's reputation grew, so did pressure to capitalize on its philosophy. Expansion plans were proposed. Premium tiers suggested. Private enclaves offered as optional upgrades. Each idea promised growth and threatened to reintroduce hierarchy. The retreat declined them all. This refusal marked the true climax of its story. In choosing not to scale status, the retreat accepted slower growth and smaller margins in exchange for integrity. Wealth would not be allowed to fragment the experience. Enough would remain enough. Over time, this commitment reshaped the community that formed around the place. Guests began arriving not to display success, but to suspend it. Titles faded. Comparisons softened. Conversations turned inward, toward ideas rather than achievements. The retreat had not erased wealth. It had neutralized it. The resolution became visible in what guests took with them. Not souvenirs, not proof of access, but a recalibrated sense of value. Many describe returning home with less urgency to upgrade, to compete, to accumulate. The retreat had not made them ascetic. It had made them selective. In a culture obsessed with more, this place offered a radical alternative. It suggested that wealth at its most powerful is not what separates us, but what allows us to stop separating ourselves at all. The retreat that redefined wealth did not diminish luxury. It clarified it. Sometimes the most valuable experiences are the ones that remind us we already have enough. The retreat